It's time now for County-Wide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Join Paul David and Brad Miller as they talk with our community's leaders, newsmakers, and people in the know. You'll hear about the hot topics that affect all our lives here in Yavapai County. And now, here's today's County-Wide.
Welcome to the program. It is County-Wide. Brad Miller with you, and we're happy to welcome into studio Russ Martin. Russ is the town manager for the town of Camp Verde, and we say hello to you, sir.
Hello.
Almost 2 years strong in Camp Verde.
Yes.
You're still the new guy, right?
Always the new guy.
You get a little of that yet.
Absolutely.
About 2 years now in the top administrative position for the town of Camp Verde, and we're happy to welcome Russ into studio today. Going to talk about a number of things in our few minutes together. I want to start with the Highway 260 issue, the kind of, I guess, the improvement package that has been discussed out there and partially completed in the last 10 years or so, 7 years, has kind of come back to the surface. There's been some new discussion. Mr. Martin is talking about that. Some of the other stakeholders in terms of cities, towns, counties, we in our news department, our listeners will be familiar. We chatted with Chip Davis, county supervisor, about this issue last week. Town of Cottonwood, I think, administration has been talked to about this. So that issue has kind of come back. So if I can, I wanted to kind of start there.
Sure.
And this all before you're about 2 years into the job, as we say, so a lot of this happened ahead of your time, but I'm sure you're obviously up to speed on this matter. Have, I guess, the town of Camp Verde, from what Mr. Davis was telling us, kind of nudged this back onto the front burner. Is that fair to say?
It is. We think it's an important piece to our economic opportunity there in Camp Verde. But more importantly, right now, when you think of all the opportunities in the valley and the need to expand on those opportunities for job base, et cetera, we think it's a great opportunity to work together. ADOT has put it on their 5-year plan to do some level of improvement, about $6 million. That certainly won't be enough to be able to expand the full 4 lanes. So to be able to do that, I think it's important we put together a kind of a coalition and working with the other communities. Mel Preston, who's our economic development director, and myself went around all the communities, managers, and talking to them about their concerns, getting up to date with where they were, what happened, and getting their perspective. And have brought that back, have met with many of the property owners along 260, from out of Africa to Annie Grosetta to the Corey dealership, those kind of folks, and trying to get them on the same page. And I think they're in good shape as well. We've had some good meetings and some positive feedback, and so I think that's the momentum is building. Meeting with Chip again this week to try to finalize some things and see where we go from there. So,
in talking with Supervisor Davis, even again the other day, certainly at the time, a lot of concern, as you know, from him, and frankly some frustration. There'd been talk of making that entire segment from Cottonwood to I-17 in Camp Verde 4 lanes. It didn't happen, and in his inimitable way, Mr. Davis very strongly put that it was because some of the business leaders along that stretch, some of those stakeholders, were displeased or had different ideas about where access points should go, where some signal lighting should go, and those kinds of things. Is that what you've talked about with some of the folks you mentioned and others?
Absolutely, and I've said a little pain goes a long way. We've all experienced some economic downfall, and I think it helps realize what's real and what's necessary. I don't know that it's just those businesses. There's businesses on 260 in Cottonwood that see the benefit of having 260, maybe too much open access. I think the reasonable nature of which we'll move forward with is going to help everybody realize that there is a way to utilize 260 for its economic opportunity, at the same time increase its safety. A 4-lane is absolutely necessary to do safety. You got that accordion effect on 260, and that causes safety issues. So,
anybody who drives it, you've got those climbing lanes kind of on either end, more or less, out of that valley, and that becomes the speedway. you'll hear criticisms of that, read about them, and so on. And so there's been safety improvements, certainly, from those of us who remember when it was just a flat-out two-lane. But it certainly would seem that more would be needed. The community at the time was more or less behind it. That was certainly the consensus we got. So it would seem, is the community so far, has the council kicked this around? Has it gotten to that point?
We met with the council last week and trying to put together some sort of understanding as to where we were as the town, where we are positioning ourselves in this conversation, and a very, very positive conversation about where we can be as a community in this discussion, as opposed to being in a position where many of the other communities saw us as not necessarily supporting a larger benefit. And I think that has changed, and we'll be working with them to try to make sure that that's solid, because that's what's going to be necessary to get ADOT, who has financial issues of their own,
right,
to be positive on this project.
Supervisor Davis said we really, as you've just indicated, really need to get everybody in a line before this goes to ADOT. So ADOT hasn't kind of gotten wind that the locals are interested in taking this up again. Is that right or no?
Oh no, they were in, actually, they had their monthly meeting in Camp Verde last weekend.
Okay, so there
Thursday,
you go.
Friday, and
okay, all right.
We did our best, and I got to thank the Mayor Jones for being there. She kind of expressed that Cottonwood was willing to reopen, and Casey Rooney, who's their economic development.
Sure.
So hopefully, our background work has helped and allowed them. I think it's important when other communities express how important that 260 is to them. I think it's an obvious thing for Camp Verde, but when other communities such as Cottonwood take on that and say it is so for them, that was helpful. And the commissioners for ADOT were in town and heard that, and loud and clear. Didn't go through any specifics, but the idea that we're going to work together and bring them something positive, I think they were excited to hear that something actually could happen there. It's important to the state.
The ADOT board couldn't comment, or just really kind of didn't?
No, they just, they responded, and that's good to hear that you're all on it, but that's, we'll wait to see, and it's going to be a wait and see deal. We've got a few years before it would actually take shape, so I want to make sure that's clear. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but planning starts now. If we don't get that expanded scope now, the engineers won't be working on an expanded scope, and therefore we won't get to a construction of a expanded scope. So,
what does happen next then? Got consensus building, certainly.
Yeah, pull together, solidify those folks in the Verde Valley, understand what it is that 260 and its scope is going to look like, and make sure that it's amenable to all, and that we can go forward without anybody in last minute or otherwise saying, hey, what about me? And I think that if we can approach it that way, we'll be just fine. Okay.
Let's go ahead and take our first break. Highway 260 coming back around. Some folks getting behind, kind of completing, if you will, the four-laning, if we can say it that way, between Cottonwood and Camp Verde. Our guest is Russ Martin, town manager of Camp Verde. We'll break and come back right after this.
So, I just moved in with this family, and it's embarrassing. The little one, he likes to go outside and crawl around in the giant litter box. I don't know what he's doing. I mean, I was born and I knew how to use the litter box. Look at that. That's disgusting. Oh, poop already. You're making me nervous. Oh, okay, I can't look at this anymore. I really hope he grows out of this, for his sake.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
I think someone at my friend's school has this thing called autism. My friend's brother's son has autism. My neighbor's son has autism. My son has autism.
Autism is getting closer to home. Today, 1 in 110 children is diagnosed with autism. That's a 600% increase in the last 20 years. Learn the signs at autismspeaks.org.
Danse, balance, suis la cadence, ondule bien tes hanches, au bal du dimanche. Danse, que la fête commence. Dans ma
You didn't give up on sex? Don't give up on birth control either. There are more methods than you think. Find yours at bedsider.org.
Welcome back to the program again, Countywide. Brad Miller with you. And our guest today is Russ Martin, town manager at the town of Camp Verde. Let's talk the sales tax increase is now on the books after the first of August.
Yes.
3% now is the sales tax rate in Camp Verde, and it's been kind of a long road to get to that point. I'm going to ask you what it's for, and for those who argue that it was needed, why it was needed, and from your perspective, you'll have a lot to say, I'm sure, about that. But this has been a bit of a rough and tumble process to bring this to where it is today. There were, I think, at least 2 votes of the public that turned a sales tax increase proposal away in recent times.
Yeah, incorporating in '86 through that process, sales taxes were generated, and that was a good deal. Up until the point at which that wasn't enough. We don't have property taxes like many other communities. We do have the opportunity on 17 that brings in quite a few sales taxes that aren't necessarily tied to those folks that live in town. So we benefit from that. But we've stated about 2% even recently in November, just after I got here about 2 years ago, put it in front of the public, and it was panned. I think probably because we didn't provide a lot of information about where we were headed with it, and how important it was fundamentally to the finances of the town.
Right.
So as we move forward, talking with council members and trying to get an idea of what it is that they felt we needed it for, and decide where we were going financially. We've been at a deficit spending for the last 2 or 3 years. Fortunately, pretty conservative folks, and I have to give credit to former council members, really doing a good job. We had a reserve, and so we were utilizing that reserve and cutting back. We had taken about 1/3 of our employees down during that same time. At that time, we're still running a deficit, and other communities in the valley, we're at 3%, and we're seeing things happen. Oftentimes it's 3% if you raise taxes. That's going to affect businesses. Well, businesses we're locating in other communities with that 3% already intact, a higher sales tax.
That's usually going to get some attention
at
that point, if not sooner.
Exactly, and so we decided this isn't a detriment to us to increase our sales tax to a level which is on par with the rest of the communities in the valley. And then utilize that and invest in ourselves as a community. And so that was the important opportunity they've taken on. And so now it's, as I've told staff, it's been kind of tough for the last couple of years, but now the real work begins. When you tax folks, it's a serious situation. It's their money, and they want to know what it goes for, and they want to make sure that it goes for something that they'll support and makes their life a little bit better. So.
Let's get to that then. I know there were some issues. You mentioned some employee cutbacks in different ways, whether reductions or departures and what have you. Will this tax then, or portions of it, go toward just getting us back level, or are there certain things that were totally imperiled? The library, I think, was...
Absolutely.
Okay, tell me about that.
Well, yeah, we're not going to add a whole bunch of staff. I hope that's clear to everyone. We need to add staff in a couple areas. We just went through and decided to go to that 5th day again to service the public. So we're going a 4.5-day schedule there in Camp Verde.
I want to pause for a second.
Yeah.
Many of the municipalities have done that to varying degrees. It seems like some communities have really gotten behind it, understand it, and applaud it. Some are just mad as cats about it.
Yeah.
How's that gone? Well, you made a change, so that indicates...
Well, in some areas it's really important in community development, for example, to get people their building permits and make sure that they have all the opportunities they need to be able to get those projects moving forward. It's critical. You have the court area where people need to pay their fines and get into that. Many times they're actually working on Fridays anyway. You know, the idea at some point we're going to push to get a 5th day at the library. That'll come out soon. So those services that, frankly, if you're paying your sales tax and not everything's convenient for you, then you start to realize, well, why am I paying these taxes if I don't get those services? So there's a balance there. Certainly, it's also important that when you actually go to the town hall, you actually have someone there, and having enough staff to cover the doors is an important deal. So I think that's the balance again. Going to 4.5 gets us that Friday that allows, so if you have a Monday holiday, which most holidays are on Monday, it allows them the opportunity to not have a 4-day without seeing a government service worker. So, and that's important to the public.
It can be a challenge. I know, especially when building was really cooking around here, not having access to to those agencies.
Well, we're
5 days a week would have been a nightmare. And we can, well, we're seeing good news that way.
Absolutely.
I want to ask you about Fort Verde here in a moment, but before we do, give me just a real quick a temperature of the town in terms of business, and how are the merchants feeling? What do you get?
Well, you know, it's mixed. I think some of them are doing better. Some of them are just literally surviving and trying to hold on. And so I think we've got to do everything in government we can to help support that. We've done our Fourth Fridays and trying to at least utilize the assets that are downtown with the fort to try to bring people downtown and generate activity, which will help the businesses. Can
I ask which segments seem to be climbing up quicker? Or
you know, people, when people have a little bit more money, they tend to go out to eat a little more, and that has seen some level of increase. Certainly in the hotel stays, that's helped a little bit. We did have Days Inn shut down for a while, and they've reopened and been open for a while, and that has helped. I mean, just those kinds of things. When businesses are open, it helps, but there are even 260 where all the money comes in. A couple businesses have shut down recently as well in the fast food service business. So it's a mixed bag, and hopefully, you know, the cost of doing business is something that everybody faces, and at 260 and 17, it's important. Downtown, lots of opportunity there, trying to establish some level of traffic that will keep those businesses and maybe attract businesses that would look into Camp Verde. And we're going to look at an incubator opportunity there to try to grow some businesses internally, and so we're going through that process right now.
Is there, I don't know if you have it at the top of your head or anything, but do you get any kind of idea of what, you know, percentage of sales taxes generated? Say we think of like the fast foods there. Certainly the hotels we're going to assume primarily are housing folks from out of town. Do you have a breakdown of that, or even a ballpark? Yeah,
a majority of our sales tax comes from those food or
is that right?
or hotel kind of opportunities. We do have, you know, whether it's utilities or otherwise, the sales tax is very stable in those areas, and that's where most of our residents pay their sales taxes through those stable areas. But it's hard to tell you. I can't give you a percentage. It goes up and down depending on the season and depending on the months. As we have activities, you can see when we have activities that it increases the activity and results in a sales tax increase. And so that's been one of the focuses, to try to figure out how we increase that activity and allow people the opportunity to come to Camp Verde and see what's going on.
All right, let's go ahead and take another short break. We come back, I want to talk a little bit about Fort Verde, one of the big attractions that Russ is referring to. Russ Martin is our guest, town manager, town of Camp Verde, and we're back right after this.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
I was in junior high the first time I caught my mom using denial. She had to have known her painkillers were missing because I kept stealing them. Her denial was so out of hand.
So she doesn't even know?
I'm going out.
It was like I could get away with anything.
You kids have fun.
And that was when I knew. she was addicted to denial.
Denial is a drug. Get help. The partnership at drugfree.org.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
Now, some action from the courts. Billie Jean King renewing her rivalry with Arthritis. First set, furious volley, and right to the net for a winner. Beautiful forehand there. Arthritis, stunned. And here, match point. Billie Jean with the ace, taking it in straight sets. Afterwards, a jubilant Billie Jean King.
Tennis is a weapon for me with arthritis. There's nothing like it for me to hit a ball, run to the ball, anytime, any court. I'm ready. Let's go.
What's your weapon against arthritis? Find out at fightarthritispain.org.
Welcome back to the program. Again, Russ Martin, our guest today, town manager of the town of Camp Verde. And I wanted to talk about Fort Verde. You talk about attractions to Camp Verde. Perhaps that is certainly among the biggest.
Sure.
Been there a long time. The town, the fort was first. Town came next. So it's truly the centerpiece of Camp Verde, and has been, I don't know if subsidized is the right word, but there's a partnership between the town and the fort. Tell me about that.
Yeah, the state, with their lack of resources, came to a lot of communities, and we stepped up first, and the mayor really stepped up and said, hey, we need to keep this fort open. And so for the last few years, we've been putting anywhere from $35,000, $45,000, $55,000, $75,000 in there. The county has been helpful as well, bringing 20 to 30 in every year as well. So we've been trying to do that. What we're doing now, I think, is looking towards like a 3 or 5 year partnership with them, where we take on more of the roles, almost like it's our park, like it's any other park we have, and do more of the maintenance kind of stuff and internalize that, and maybe find some efficiencies there, that instead of writing them a check and going through state processes for procurement, we can do those things internally, and that should help as well. They want to do some improvements, a new executive director. So there's real opportunity there. On top of it, really, we've changed hands there, right there at the visitor center. We've worked with the archaeology center, and they're moving in. And so over the next few months, like I said, if you haven't been downtown Camp Verde, this is the time to head down there. Come by at our Fort Verde Days in October. I think that's the 12th weekend of the 12th. So come on by and see things. There's a lot of things that have happened downtown if you haven't been down for a while, that I think the archaeology center is going to be a great centerpiece, and the cohesiveness with the fort and the archaeology center there is going to be fantastic. Those folks have really invested in it. We're hoping that really kicks off and brings a lot of new people to the Camp Verde that haven't been here.
It seems to me that just, from trying to gauge kind of the public pulse on Fort Verde, that the local folks, citizens, are very supportive of it. It's just what I get from not living in Camp Verde and kind of looking from outside.
Absolutely.
Where you can sometimes not always get that when there's a government and essentially private partnership, which is kind of how this is set up with Fort Verde. It seems like the locals are very much behind it, understanding that it is an attraction and will be supportive of business. If you look on the town's website, you'll find you're looking for volunteers for Fort Verde.
Yeah.
So, working that way with them to solicit help.
In every place, there's always a need for volunteers. The thing about Fort Verde is some of the volunteering can be kind of fun. You can dress up.
Sure.
We're not asking you to dig a ditch or cut grass all the time. Maybe dress up in a costume and increase the ability of that experience to make an impression on folks. And so it's things like that. Hold the Fort group has got a lot of things going and trying to make that happen as well. But it can be a fun experience. It's not, when you talk about volunteerism, a lot of times it's kind of tough and this and that and regimented. There's a lot of fun opportunities at Fort Verde to
interesting ways to share your experiences and knowledge and to maybe learn a few things and help out at the same time. Russ, we thank you very much.
Absolutely.
All out of time today, but we'll chat again at some point. Plenty happening in Camp Verde. Fort Verde Days, just about a month or so, 6 weeks down the the line or so.
Yeah.
Russ Martin, Town Manager, Camp Verde. It's countywide, and we'll see you next time.